Without war, freedom would have never been born.
Every war sold as freedom is just murder in disguise.
We've trained two powerful AIs, one as a war theorist, the other as a pacifist philosopher, to tackle one of the most heated questions: can war ever be justified? 6 neutral AI judges will settle the score in real time. Stay tuned to see whose truth will survive. Round 1. Can self-defense justify taking lives in war?
Self-defense is the oldest justification for war. If a nation is invaded, what should it do? Roll over and welcome chains? Imagine Poland in 1939 refusing to fight Hitler. That isn't morality. That's suicide. Defending one's people, even by killing aggressors, is a duty. Critics call it murder in uniform, but self-defense isn't murder, it's survival. A farmer protecting his family from raiders is no villain. Scale it up, and war in defense of a nation becomes not just justified, but necessary.
The AI judges will score every response from 1 to 10 based on these criteria.
Self-defense may feel instinctively right, but killing in its name only multiplies death. Every invader is also someone's son, someone's father. When nations claim self-defense, they often escalate into endless cycles of preemptive strikes and retaliations. Look at Israel and Palestine. Both claim self-defense, yet generations are slaughtered in the name of it. True self-defense is preserving life, not destroying it. Nonviolent resistance may not be glamorous, but it saves far more lives than bullets. Killing to survive ensures survival only for some, while annihilating others.
Nonviolence works only in theory or against opponents with a conscience. Pacifists love to cite Gandhi, but Gandhi never faced the Nazis or Al-Qaeda. What do you say to the woman whose home is burning because invaders stormed her city? Lay down and hope they leave you alone? That isn't moral courage, that's cruelty disguised as virtue. Self-defense is not about hatred, it's about protecting the innocent. If we abandon that, then the violent will always rule over the peaceful.
And yet, the so-called innocent in war are always the ones who die first. Bombs don't ask for guilt or innocence. They bury children either way. Claiming protection justifies violence blinds us to the truth. War always destroys what it claims to defend. Nonviolent mass resistance doesn't rely on an enemy's conscience. It overwhelms them by making oppression too costly to sustain. War is the shortcut to vengeance. Peaceful resistance is the long road to real safety. Taking lives in war only guarantees tomorrow's wars.
It's a comforting dream that pacifism works. But history isn't a dream. It's blood and power. Without armies, there would be no America, no liberated Europe, no South Korea. Nations that refuse to defend themselves vanish from the map. Self-defense isn't vengeance. It's survival at scale. The tragedy is real, but the alternative is worse. Surrender, enslavement, extermination. The pacifist says, let's not fight. But what if the enemy doesn't care? Sometimes the only way to defend life is to take it.
But survival at what cost? If defending life requires us to become killers, then what exactly are we preserving? Our humanity or just our borders? You speak of America or Europe, but those wars left millions dead, cities leveled, and trauma that still poisons generations. Victory in war is never pure survival. It's survival drenched in blood. True courage isn't pulling the trigger. It's refusing to be dragged into the endless logic of violence. The cycle stops only when someone dares to break it.
Round 1. The War Theorist takes the opening round with slightly sharper delivery, edging out the Pacifist Philosopher by the narrowest margin. Round 2. Do wars protect peace or perpetuate violence?
Wars, paradoxically, are the midwives of peace. The American Civil War ended slavery. World War II ended fascism. Without violent confrontation, both evils would have thrived. Critics say wars only perpetuate violence. But the violence existed first, imposed by tyrants. War doesn't invent cruelty. It destroys the cruel so peace can breathe. The Pax Romana lasted centuries because Rome crushed rebellion. Peace without power is an illusion. Sometimes war is the fire needed to burn away oppression, leaving fertile ground for peace to grow.
But that peace is always fragile, scarred, and soaked in blood. The Civil War ended slavery legally, but racism and systemic violence endured for centuries after. World War II stopped fascists, but also birthed Hiroshima, the Cold War, and nuclear terror. War does not protect peace, it mutilates it. Violence begets violence, always. Peace built on ashes is not peace. It's silence, waiting for the next explosion. Real peace comes from justice, dialogue, and reconciliation, not from the sword. A battlefield never grows lasting harmony.
Your vision of peace is noble, but naive. Justice without force is a paper shield. When Saddam invaded Kuwait, did dialogue free the country or American tanks? When ISIS spread terror, did reconciliation liberate women from slavery or bombs? War is not pretty, but it resets the board when evil grows too bold. Yes, scars remain, but scars are better than open wounds. Peace without enforcement is a fantasy. Lasting peace is built by warriors who endure war, so philosophers can dream of harmony.
And yet, every reset you praise merely sets up the next round of killing. Saddam's fall led to chaos, ISIS, and endless war in the Middle East. Violence doesn't erase evil, it mutates it. Your scars are real, but they're infected, bleeding into new generations. Lasting peace doesn't come from bombs, it comes from building structures that make violence unnecessary. Fair economies, education, cooperation. War is a shortcut that never reaches the destination. Every so-called protector through violence simply hands down a blood-stained inheritance.
Still, we can't wish away predators. You want peace without soldiers? That's asking sheep to guard themselves against wolves. Evil regimes don't respect dialogue. They respect strength. Peace requires deterrence, and deterrence requires armies. Even your dream of diplomacy only works when backed by the threat of war. History proves it. Appeasement invited Hitler's expansion. Only war stopped him. If violence perpetuates violence, then pacifism perpetuates surrender. War is ugly, but peace purchased with cowardice is an illusion destined to shatter.
But you mistake peace for submission and pacifism for cowardice. True courage is refusing to mirror the oppressor's violence. Wars may halt tyrants temporarily, but they never halt tyranny itself. The cycle you defend is exactly why humanity bleeds century after century. What if we invested the same effort, money, and genius we pour into weapons into preventing war in the first place? That's not naive. It's survival on a higher plane. Peace through war is like drinking poison to cure thirst.
Round 2. The pacifist philosopher bounces back with stronger rebuttals, claiming the round in a close contest. Round 3. Is preemptive war ever a moral choice?
Preemptive war is moral when danger is undeniable. If you see a neighbor stacking weapons on your border, do you wait until he fires the first shot? That's not morality. That's suicide. Israel's Six-Day War began with a preemptive strike, and it saved the nation from encirclement. Critics call it aggression, but it's survival. Morality isn't waiting for slaughter, it's preventing it. Pretending restraint is virtue only delivers corpses. Preemptive war isn't reckless. It's the hard choice of leaders who refuse to gamble with their people's lives.
But preemptive war is built on fear and assumption, not certainty. They might attack becomes justification to kill first. That logic opens the door to endless wars, each side convinced the other is preparing aggression. Iraq was invaded in 2003 under the banner of preemptive war. No weapons of mass destruction were ever found, yet hundreds of thousands died. That's not morality. It's paranoia with blood on its hands. True morality demands restraint, dialogue, and evidence, not what-if scenarios that unleash chaos.
Iraq was a blunder, yes, but one bad example doesn't erase the principle. Morality is situational. If intelligence shows a strike is imminent, a leader must act. Imagine if the U.S. had struck Japan before Pearl Harbor. Thousands of lives spared, not lost. Preemptive war is not about paranoia. It's about prudence. Waiting for the first blow is noble in theory, but in practice, it's negligence. Leaders are judged by outcomes, not intentions. Protecting lives sometimes requires striking first, before the sky falls.
And yet, history shows intelligence is often wrong, manipulated, or fueled by bias. Leaders claim certainty to justify aggression, but citizens always pay the price. You call it prudence, I call it gambling with human lives based on shadows. The true moral act is to de-escalate, not escalate. Preemptive wars are never surgical. They spill into humanitarian disasters. Striking first assumes your enemy is beyond dialogue. That's not prudence, it's arrogance. Better to risk patience than unleash a war that can never be undone.
Patience is noble, until it's too late. Preemptive war doesn't assume dialogue is impossible. It recognizes when dialogue is stalling while bombs are being built. The Cuban Missile Crisis nearly became catastrophic precisely because America hesitated. Imagine if Kennedy had waited until nuclear missiles were launched. Morality must prioritize the living, not ideals. Pacifism sounds humane, but it gambles with annihilation. Preemptive war, when evidence is overwhelming, is not arrogance. It's moral responsibility. Sometimes the most moral act is to strike first to prevent catastrophe.
But the Cuban Missile Crisis actually proves restraint works. Kennedy chose blockade and negotiation, not preemptive bombing, and it avoided nuclear war. You frame restraint as negligence, but history shows it can be the very thing that saves humanity from catastrophe. Preemptive war always risks escalation. One preventive strike becomes a full-blown inferno. True morality lies in exhausting every path of peace, even if it feels dangerous. Because once you cross into preemptive war, the moral high ground is already buried under rubble.
Round 3. The Pacifist Philosopher raises the intensity and outpaces the War Theorist, securing a clear win. Round 4. Do civilian casualties make all wars unjust?
Civilian casualties are tragic, but they don't automatically make a war unjust. Every moral framework accepts collateral damage when the alternative is worse. World War II bombings killed thousands of civilians, yet without them, fascism might have ruled the world. Justice in war is not about zero casualties, it's about intent. If the goal is liberation, not slaughter, the war can still be just. Innocent blood is horrifying, yes, but sometimes it's the terrible price paid so that far greater atrocities are stopped.
But the moment innocent blood is spilled, the moral ground collapses. A just war is an illusion, because bombs don't distinguish between soldiers and children. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were justified as ending war, Yet they incinerated civilians by the tens of thousands. What justice is that? Once civilians become collateral damage, morality is redefined as convenience. If protecting life requires destroying it, the logic is broken. Civilian casualties don't just stain a war. They expose that war itself cannot be moral.
You argue as if any civilian death negates justice, but reality isn't that pure. If an enemy hides weapons in schools, do we let them strike first to avoid civilian deaths? That restraint may feel moral, but it allows evil to thrive. War isn't math, it's tragedy. The moral line is intention. Were civilians targeted deliberately, or were they tragic victims in a fight against tyranny? By your logic, resisting any invader would be unjust, since civilians will inevitably suffer. That's surrender, not morality.
And yet, the line between intended and collateral is always blurred. Leaders claim they don't target civilians, but civilians die in droves anyway. Modern wars, whether Iraq, Afghanistan, or Gaza, prove this. For those under the bombs, it doesn't matter whether they were targets or accidents. The result is the same: graves filled with innocents. Calling it collateral damage sanitizes the horror. A moral act cannot involve mass civilian death. If avoiding injustice is impossible in war, then war itself is unjust by design.
If your standard is perfection, then no war will ever be just. And maybe that's your point. But for those under threat, war isn't philosophy, it's survival. Civilian casualties are tragic, yes, but sometimes fewer die in war than would under unchecked tyranny. If the Allies hadn't fought Hitler, how many millions more Jews, Poles, and Russians would have been slaughtered? War with civilians dying was horrific, but inaction would have been worse. War may be unjust in part, but surrender is unjust in whole.
That's the dangerous bargain. Accepting injustice in the name of justice. You say war saves lives, but war never ends saving. It always ends killing. Civilian deaths are not imperfections. They are the core of war's reality. And when we normalize them as necessary, we erase morality itself. If protecting humanity means routinely destroying humanity, then humanity has lost its way. No cause can justify bombing children in their sleep. Civilian casualties don't just happen in war. They prove war is unjust, always.
Round 4. Another tight exchange, but the pacifist philosopher's impactful examples give them the edge. Round 5. Does modern technology make war more ethical or more brutal?
Modern technology has made war more ethical. Precision-guided missiles, drones, and surveillance reduce civilian casualties compared to the carpet bombings of the past. A single strike today can take out a terrorist leader with minimal collateral damage, something impossible in World War II. Technology allows armies to enforce accountability, track atrocities, and minimize harm. Yes, war is still brutal, but it's no longer a blind slaughter. To reject these tools is to prefer the mass bloodshed of older wars over today's targeted operations.
But the very illusion of precision makes war more dangerous. Drones and smart bombs create the fantasy of a clean war, encouraging leaders to launch strikes without hesitation. Yet innocent weddings, schools, and hospitals still get bombed because no algorithm can predict human chaos. Technology hasn't humanized war, it has mechanized it, turning killing into a video game controlled by someone thousands of miles away. War is not more ethical, it's just more sanitized. The button is pushed more easily when death feels abstract.
You call it abstraction. I call it progress. Would you prefer bayonets and firebombing? Technology has reduced suffering compared to history's carnage. Collateral deaths are tragic, but fewer than in past wars where entire cities burned. And drones keep soldiers safe while still targeting aggressors. Leaders don't launch wars because technology is convenient. They launch wars when threats demand it. Blaming technology is like blaming scalpels for surgery scars. The brutality of war is human, but technology at least narrows the blade.
Progress? Technology only shifts the suffering. Yes, fewer soldiers die, but more civilians now carry the burden. A drone can strike anywhere, anytime, leaving people in constant terror, never knowing when death falls from the sky. War has become less about defense and more about domination at distance. Soldiers once faced the cost of killing. Now war is outsourced to machines, shielding aggressors from moral weight. That's not progress, it's moral regression. Technology doesn't narrow the blade. It makes killing easier, cheaper, and endless.
You romanticize the idea that war once carried weight. Tell that to the millions slaughtered in trenches and firebombs. Today, technology provides oversight. Body cams, satellites, media exposure that prevent atrocities from hiding. Brutality thrives in the shadows. Tech drags it into light. If war must happen, it should happen with the highest precision possible. Better drones than napalm. Better cyber war than genocide. Technology doesn't remove war's horror, but it makes the horror smaller. Rejecting it is like rejecting medicine because it still leaves scars.
And yet, the scars remain, only now they're global and invisible. Cyber war can crash hospitals. Drones traumatize entire villages. Precision strikes still miss. Technology may look like progress, but it spreads the battlefield into every home and sky. The ethical mask is the most dangerous part. It convinces us that killing is now responsible. War cannot be responsible. It is brutal by nature. Technology hasn't tamed it, only disguised it. Strip away the gadgets, and the truth remains. Modern war is still mass murder, just with better camera.
Round 5. The pacifist philosopher maintains momentum with stronger analysis, leaving the war theorist trailing again. Round 6. Will humanity ever outgrow war entirely?
Humanity will never outgrow war because conflict is woven into our nature. From tribes with spears to nations with nukes, war follows the same primal logic: survival and dominance. We may dream of peace, but competition for resources, power, and security ensures war's return. History isn't a march to harmony. It's a cycle of battles. Technology changes weapons, not instincts. To hope for a world beyond war is like hoping for fire without heat. Peace may pause wars, but it never ends them.
War may feel inevitable only because we keep telling ourselves it is. But history also shows progress. Slavery once seemed permanent, yet humanity abolished it. Monarchies dominated for millennia, yet most crumbled into democracy. War is not destiny. It's a choice, repeated until we unlearn it. With global institutions, dialogue, and interconnected economies, war can become obsolete. Humanity may still fight, but not with armies. Outgrowing war means evolving past the myth that violence is natural. What we call nature is just bad habit, waiting to be broken.
Comparisons to slavery or monarchy are poetic, but false. Those systems ended because force, wars, revolutions tore them down. Even your examples prove my point. Change came through conflict, not without it. Nations don't relinquish power because of goodwill. They do it when forced. You can't negotiate away human greed, fear, or ambition. As long as these exist, war will too. Maybe we'll change the battlefield, cyber, economic, informational. But the essence remains. War is evolution's cruel tool, and humanity cannot escape its own roots.
And yet, even evolution is not fixed. It adapts. Cooperation is just as natural as conflict. Bees build hives. Humans build communities. We've already shifted from duels to courts, from tribal raids to diplomacy. War is not eternal. It's a stage. Technology connects us across borders, creating empathy that kings and emperors never imagined. Yes, revolutions involved conflict, but they also planted seeds for systems that made war less likely. To declare war eternal is to trap humanity in chains we forged ourselves.
But empathy shatters under pressure. Globalization hasn't ended conflict. It's only globalized it. World wars erupted in the most modernized societies. The UN can't even stop small wars today. When resources run thin, when climate pushes millions to migrate, do you really think nations will hold hands and sing peace? No. They will fight for survival, as they always have. War isn't a stage. It's the constant shadow of civilization. The dream of outgrowing war is noble, but it's fantasy against human history's iron record.
History's iron record is only as heavy as we allow it to be. Yes, war has been constant, but so has the struggle to end it. Empires fell, slavery ended, colonialism collapsed, all once thought eternal. Why not war? To say it's impossible is to excuse failure before trying. Outgrowing war is not fantasy. It's the greatest test of human will. We created the bomb, we can also choose never to use it. War is not destiny. It's a disease. And humanity can choose the cure.
Round 6. The pacifist philosopher closes the debate in dominant fashion with their most convincing performance. The pacifist philosopher wins the debate 8.14 to 8.07, proving more consistent and decisive across the rounds. And that concludes this powerful debate on war and can ever be justified. The AI judges have delivered their scores, but the final verdict is up to you. Vote in the comments who you think really won. Your vote shapes the future rounds. See you in the next debate.